Morning, everybody. It's Dave Morrison. I'm coming to you from the Hobo Dojo in sunny Southern California. Apparently, summer will never, ever end. It's supposed to be, oh God, I don't know, 90 degrees again today. It's been hot. I just wanted to check in with you guys real quick. We will have produced videos again at some point in the relatively near future. I apologize for not having anything up this week. I'm telling you, it is really, really hard to keep up with the news cycle just because I don't want to just go, okay, look, there's a bomber, so I'm going to go give my opinion, even though I don't know anything about it and we don't know what's going on, who the person is, but I'm going to go online and try to get some clicks and talk about stuff that I'm just making up and just pulling out of my ass. I just don't want to do that. So, neither does Jason. So we try to wait till we have something cogent to say. As you know, I don't jump on every issue. I tend to try to think and write more about values, more about what kind of we stand for and what I think is the best way to live your life on planet Earth. Jason is starting a new job, as I think I mentioned before, and he's going to be in training for 5 weeks. And so this is going to make it very, very difficult for him to spend any time in his studio. He'll probably be able to make some videos. He'll probably be able to get home and make some videos at night. He also has a kid on the way, and so, you know, he's in a position where spending a lot of time doing anything other than what is related to getting ready for the blessed event and or spending time securing the good career job. Anything other than these two things naturally are not going to be accepted as top priority in the Seiler home. I'm unloved and unlovable, so nobody tells me what to do, except I have to earn a living too. So I have a job starting tomorrow morning bright and early as well. Excuse me, just having a sip of product placement here. This is really good product placement. Ah, nice. There actually is coffee in here. This is the brew that I have every morning, which contains collagen, coffee, artificial sweetener, and creamer. So it's like this probably, I'm not sure if I'm poisoning myself or saving my life with this stuff, but it sure does go down better in a Blue Collar Logic cup. So I just wanted to talk to you about what's going to be happening in the next few weeks. Okay, I got a couple of these little cameras, these little Sony cameras. I had these previously with my partner Alexia from musical events, and she's been doing a musical series of her own, so she's had one of them, and I borrowed that back from her and used it to take the show last week, 2 weeks ago, whenever that was. And mine, we had two of them, and I kept one of them, and I couldn't get mine to work. So I tinkered with it all weekend a little bit. I think I finally figured out what the problem was, and I think I got that camera working again and figured out how to work it. It's on the charger right now. I bought these two cameras. Well, I have these two cameras. I may have to give this one back to Alexia, but at least I have one, and then I have my phone, and I may purchase another one, like a kind of a GoPro thing with a wide angle, for the purpose of a trip coming up that I've got. I will be leaving at the end of, just after voting day. Basically, I'm going to vote. I like to vote on the actual day, you know, because then you're there with your neighbors and everybody's standing in line together. I just find it to be an, you know, a community event that I like. So I like to do it on actual voting day. So I will be working on this house in Los Feliz, the Los Feliz district of Los Angeles, tomorrow through this coming week, tomorrow being Monday. And then I'm going to get through the next weekend. I'm going to get my stuff together, vote, and head out of town. Where I'm going is I'm going to Parker, Arizona. And what happens there is every year they do what's called a van build. And so people who are living the nomadic lifestyle, and I've mentioned before in other videos that I've become friends with a bunch of people who, they live in vans and converted school buses. Some of them are part-timers, some are full-timers. Some live in full-on motorhomes or sort of older C-class motorhomes. They're like a van with the, you know, with the sleeper over the top of the van. A lot of them live in those things. Some just live in, you know, minivans like my little Astro van, or Safari van. It's like an Astro. So but it's as organized by a guy named Jamie Dimon, who is sort of the alpha male of this tribe, and just a guy who's a real giver. He's organized these events. People show up. They spend a couple of weeks camped in the desert. Last year it was a whole month that they were there, culminating in Thanksgiving. And I went to that one. Oops, this is my portable teleprompter, which I also purchased, and now it's just here falling around different places. Product placement. I get no Amazon points if you buy this. In fact, I have no idea if it's any good. If it's not any good, I'll tell you. I was looking at it yesterday, and I'm a little suspicious as to whether it'll actually work very well or not. But it was cheap, so it has that going for it. But I'm going to take that along, and a couple of tripods that I bought, those kind of bargain tripods you can get from Amazon. A couple of those, the 2 cameras, and I'm going to take them to the desert with me, and so I'm going to try to do some videos there. There are some pretty interesting people that are out there, and I'm hoping I can have a couple of things where we sit down in lawn chairs and just talk about life, particularly with the emphasis on attaining personal freedom and liberty. We conservatives are really oriented toward liberty, which is, I think, that something that a lot of liberal people don't understand about us. That what we really are the live and let live party. We're not the micromanage your life party. But there's this mythology, as a former Democrat, I can tell you, there's this mythology that's been hit very hard. Oh, Republicans are trying to, get into your bedroom and tell you what to do, and, they want to morally micromanage your life. All of that is just not true at all. This whole mythology that conservatives run around, trying to find gay people in their neighborhood so they can persecute them, or run people of different races or religions out of their area. This isn't true at all. In order to get any kind of reaction like that from a Republican, in my estimation and in my experience, you got to push them really friggin' hard. You got to push them into the corner before they'll come out swinging, as they did about gay marriage. They didn't care. They weren't doing anything about gay marriage. It was accepted that people could have domestic partnerships, and that was A-OK. I mean, Barack Obama came out when he was running in 2008 and said, no, it's a man and woman thing. Domestic partnerships are the way to go. Hillary Clinton said exactly the same thing. That was, we all agreed upon. Yeah, absolutely. There was no pushback from Republicans about them having all the functional rights of a married couple. It's just that people who have a religious belief system don't want it to be called marriage, because marriage is a specific thing that is meant to unite the 2 different genders. We actually believe there are 2 different genders, male and female. So that they could each benefit from one another's strengths, and that they can moderate each other's weaknesses. So, anyway, bit of a digression. But the one thing that I think we have a lot of in common with a lot of what you might call sort of hippies, and the type of people who are out there doing a lot of rock climbing and things like that. They're seeing the country a lot. They were living in these school buses. These people are really very libertarian, very conservative in some ways. They don't chase the dollar. I'm losing my train of thought here. They want to live more simply, and that has to do with liberty, freedom. So I want to have some discussions with people out there who aren't necessarily of our particular political persuasion, don't necessarily vote the way we do, but do believe in freedom and liberty. It's a core value to them, just as it is with us. And I'd sort of like to find some crossover places in the interest of kind of understanding people across the divide. As you know, I did one video about that, fixing the divide, and I've promised a part 2, which is called the Peace Talks. And I have been having a lot of discussions with people and realizing how very difficult it is to sit down and talk about something that will get you into a discussion of values where they can say, oh, this conservative dude, he's not so bad at all. And we'll be saying the same thing. You know what, maybe I misjudged them. They're not quite as emotional and crazy as I thought. Or certainly a rank and file person like this, a rank and file liberal Democrat, is not Antifa. They are not the kind of people that are running into restaurants and screaming at people until they leave. They're not radicals. We really have an issue in this country of of normal people against the radicals who are making our lives really miserable. Radicals on both sides. And we're seeing it now. This bomber situation that went on. That guy's a radical. Now, how he got to be a radical, I don't know. I have a feeling that if it is as they say it is, that he became hyper-Trumpist, that's not hard to believe. There are people all over the radio and all over the blogosphere who Donald Trump comes out with one message, and they twist it into a message of hatred. And it happens by the leftists twisting his words to make it sound like hatred, and people who call themselves alt-right or national socialist, or not national socialist, but white nationalist, or any of those things. They'll take something that Donald Trump says, basically what we need to preserve our borders so that we can have a country, so that the jobs go primarily first to Americans, and then we import people as we need them to have bolster up the economy properly. There's nothing weird about that. But then this week, Donald Trump calls himself a nationalist. This past week, it's the week in outrage, right? And there now proof that he's a Nazi. There's no other meaning for that other than National Socialist, the Nazi Party. So the radicals will take something that Donald Trump says and give it its worst possible spin on the left, and on the right they'll give it the most reactionary and freaky alt-right spin. And the decent people, the more or less moderate Republicans and Democrats who live in the biggest part in the middle, where you've got the, I don't know if this is my left hand, I don't know what it is to you, where you got the left-wing extremists and the right-wing extremists. We're trapped in the middle by these people. It's like a pizza. This is probably the worst analogy I've ever heard. Came to me the other night, and I thought, that is such a bad analogy, I must share it. It's like a pizza. At the outside edges, it's hard and crusty and inflexible and unappetizing, and in the middle is where all the good stuff is. But when you cut it into sections, you pick it up, and if you're too far in the middle, well, you just strip off the edge. And so you have to be somewhere where you're firmly on one side or the other, so there's some body to it, so that the pepperoni doesn't fall off. I told you it was the worst analogy ever advanced here on YouTube or any other place in the history of the universe. It's really, really bad. But for some reason it sticks in my mind. That hard crust on the outside, those inflexible people. We've got them on our side, like this bomber guy. They've got them on their side, like the Antifa people. These guys have a lot in common. They're exactly the same character type. They think they're going to punish people physically for not agreeing with them. The rest of us just want to have a discussion, or drop politics altogether and just say, look, you live according to your values, I'll live according to mine, I'll influence you the best way I can, and maybe you'll influence me a little bit. That's the way we want to live. So I'm going to be out in the desert. I'm going to sit down with some people. Hopefully I'll have a couple of interviews with people who are living full-time in a way that they've reduced a lot of their things. They've shrunk their life down. They've simplified. Some of them are retired. Some of them are quite young. And what else we'll be doing out there is building each other's vans. That's what the real purpose of this van build is to get together, and people who have skills, who have some blue-collar background, who know how to do things like build cabinets and stuff like that. Some older guys who've been doing this a long time, now they're retired, they get out there and they show younger kids how to build the cabinets in their van like they want, how to fix things up. And there's people who have mechanical backgrounds, and people who've done all kinds of different things, and they're just helping each other for 2 weeks. To me, this is a model of what America really is. It's in a sense like, do you remember the old movie Witness, where the Amish, a guy was hiding with the Amish because he was wanted by the FBI or something. Forget what it was, but he was with the Amish and he was hiding out there, and he kind of fell in love with the girl and stuff. But the set piece in the middle of that movie was this beautifully photographed sequence where a bunch of neighbors got together to help somebody build a barn. It was what they call a barn raising. And in a sense, this is kind of a modern version of that. And there's there's all kinds of resonances of our history as hunter-gatherers that you'll see with the nomadic people of today, where they don't really relate very well to staying put at one place. They just feel this need to wander on, as if they are, hunter-gatherers in search of the next. They want to come over the next hill and say and look out there and see buffalo, or verdant streams, and or fruit trees naturally growing, and think, yes, I'll stay here until I've exhausted the resources, and then I'll go off over the next hill. There's something in us that wants to live that way, that wants to seek our fortune, or seek at least our sustenance, rather than sitting in one place and earning it. And there's something to be said for that. So I'm looking for ways in my own life and to balance out that, to balance out the difference between staying put and earning a living all the time, the work ethic, and the liberty ethic, because you can't be really free if you're working all the time. So there's this tension, and also there's this tension between law and order and liberty. Another place that I'll be going a little later in the year, or probably early part of next year, is I'll be going out to Slab City for a while. I was there for 20 days last week, and I think that's last year. I think that's a really interesting societal development. What it is an old military base near Nyland, California. That's the closest town. It's just a nothing little town. It's sort of at the southern tip of the Salton Sea, if that means anything to you. You can find that on a map. Not too far from Brawley, which is then again not too far from the Mexican border. It's out in the middle of nowhere. It's in the Imperial Valley. It's farm country, and there used to be this military base there. And there were buildings, probably a lot of Quonset huts and things, that were set on these slabs, concrete slabs. Well, the military cleared out all the buildings and said, this isn't a base we're going to use anymore, and they moved out. And a bunch of sort of squatters gradually moved in, and they used the slabs to build on, sort of. So they have these makeshift homes. Some of them drive old buses and vans. So there's this crossover point with these people and the van dwellers. Although the Slab City people tend to stay there all year. It's really hot in the summer. In the winter, it's quite pleasant. And so I went down there and I hung out with these people, again, in a sense, almost like an anthropologist studying people who live with no laws. It's called the last lawless town in America by some people. And it's fascinating because you see people there that generally have no rules written down. It seems to be, the only rule seems to be, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And there is some enforcement if you should be a real dick for long enough. You may come back, you may be gone to town one day, and you come back and somebody's burned your van down. So you don't mess with people out there too much. But other than that, people leave you alone. And it's this again, this tension between liberty and, in this case, law and order. So you've got this tension between liberty and the work ethic, so being self-reliant on the one hand, and the other hand being free, that makes some people want to say screw this, and they go off and they don't want anything to do with anything with work. And of course what happens to them generally is they generally start getting some benefits in, because hey, you got to eat, and then they become sort of wards of the democratic state. So how do we do this? How do we as conservatives find this sweet spot that is between that is law-abiding, but not so law-abiding that you've got a million regulations and a million people telling you what to do, and a million new laws coming down that benefit nobody but lawyers? So how do we live between that but still have respect for law and order by way of protecting ourselves and our families and our personal property from people just going crazy? Where is it that people best can live? That they can live at a sort of sweet spot where these values get balanced out in a way that works, that doesn't become oppressive, that doesn't become a welfare state. So I'll be going down there a little later in the year and doing some interviews from there. Hopefully, an interview with Builder Bill, a guy who I'll just preview some of his wisdom. Bill told me one time, we were sitting around chatting, and I said, "Why does this work here, Bill? You know, why are you guys not tearing each other apart? And why are there 40,000 homeless people living on the streets of LA? What's going on with this whole situation of people seeking freedom and being unable to have regular jobs? And why do some of them come here and build something like you've done?" He's built a sort of an outdoor nightclub there, and he's a bit of a legend. And Bill told me, he goes, "You know, if every state had a Slab City and just gave some land over to, in a sense, anarchy, and let people go there and work it out to themselves by themselves, we wouldn't have a homeless issue. People would be able to figure out a way that they can be productive to the necessary degree that they have a roof over their head. People could help each other. People could seek and find resources. They could recycle old building supplies and things like that." I don't know if he's correct in that. I'm going to have to get into to tease that out and give me some evidence on that. But I do want to talk to that guy. There's a library out there where people actually are there every day, and they accumulated a bunch of books. There's little restaurants. It's a fascinating place, and there's no police. There's no law. It's vigilante in a way that doesn't fly off the handle. And why? So these are the questions I'm asking. So anyway, this past week, of course, been completely crazy. The first outrage was Donald Trump nationalism, you know, and then everyone their heads had to explode en masse because one is not allowed to say nationalism. And then you turn around, he's sending troops to the border, and because the caravans are coming in, and, you know, some of us are looking at, invading army, and others are looking at, those poor people, bring them in, you know, screw us. But, you know, so there's that controversy. And now Donald Trump is sending troops to the border. Everyone's thinking, this could be like cross between Kent State and the Tiananmen Square. You know, we're going to be shooting them at the border. You know, like it's an episode of Walking Dead, and they're trying to storm the prison complex. You know, we'll go to the fence and poke them in the face with a pike. Overreactions, and then of course we find out that this guy with the bombs is probably a Trump supporter, and so now this is definitely Donald Trump's fault. It makes you exhausted. It just makes you exhausted. And but I did want to draw one analogy before I'll close here, because I've just been rambling here. But I do want to tell you that what I sat down to tell you was, don't give up hope and faith in our channel. We will be back to producing properly written and taped video essays, video columns, whatever you want to call them, before too long. We just got to figure out our new schedules. But I was thinking, these people that are coming up from Honduras, some people are coming from the angle that they're trying to storm the country. They don't give a rat's ass about us. I think what's happening down there is they're being riled up by people down there. And they're being, not riled up, I think they're being given false hope. They're being used by people that are, now they're going to go out and walk 1,000 miles. Of course, right-wing media goes down there, and they're looking for anybody that's yelling an anti-American slogan. And the right-wing media will show you the guy with the anti-American slogan, right? Because that's their brand, and they want you to keep tuned into their station out of your fear. The left-wing media goes down there and they're, where's a woman carrying a child? Where's a woman carrying a child? You know, we need to find a young family, and they've got a child, and then we'll try to get them to cry a little bit on camera. And they're not going to show you the other people who are shouting anti-American slogans. So there are undoubtedly some sort of activist people with them. They're the ones shouting the slogans. They're the ones that organized it, and a bunch of other people who just are thinking they've been told that, oh yeah, America's got open borders. Yeah, here's the last opportunity. This Donald Trump guy's going to slam the door. So we need to get up there and sneak on through while they still have open borders. So let's get up there before it's too late. And here's a little bit of money for tortillas and beans along the way. And let's go, folks. And people start walking 1,000 miles. 1,000 miles. And they're going to come up here and find out that they are nothing but political tools. And, oh, the activists left. I hate to ever say that I hate people, but I hate that whole idea that you're going to find people that are vulnerable, like, for instance, a gay couple, that they fear that they're still a little bit weirded out about it. They know they got blowback from their parents and aunts and uncles and things. They felt ashamed when they were young of being gay, and now they're trying to grow up into gay adults, and they are now being told that everybody hates them and wants to persecute them. So they find a gay couple and they go in and order a wedding cake from the one baker in town with a fish, a Christian fish on their logo. They go, this person won't bake the cake. Let's go in there and we'll make a thing about it. And there's perfectly wonderful gay people. They're just trying to blend into the neighborhood. They just want to live in a place where they take care of their lawn and they wave across. Hey, Dave, how you doing over there? And I wave back and everything's fine. Oh, those are the women who live next door. They sure take nice care of their lawn. I guess, yeah. If all lesbians are like them, I'm good with it. That's what the gay people that I know want to do. They want to just blend in and not have it be a big thing all the time that they, for some reason, happen to like people of the same sex. But the activists get hold of them, and they make a case out of it. And then people in the Bible Belt who don't know very many gays, because all the gays tend to move off to San Francisco and West Los Angeles and Manhattan, they don't know very many gays, and they think, God, what pushy people gays are. There must be something wrong with them in their minds. Now I really don't like gays. Before I was okay with it. So the activists actually hurt the people that they pretend to be helping. Just like these folks down in Honduras. They're gonna cause them to march 1,000 miles and then have to be bussed back, and they'll be embarrassed, and they will have left whatever job they had at home, and they might lose that. They'll go, what was that all about? There was no open border. What? Huh? But that'll all be forgotten, because the left will be using it just as a flashpoint to scream more epithets about conservatives, and that's all that it is. That's the way that it is with the black community. They cherry pick of the thousands and thousands of interactions that go on every day between a black motorist and a white cop, and they ignore the overwhelming majority where everything's fine. The black person is polite. The white cop is polite. Oh yeah, I'm sorry, officer. I didn't really see that stop sign. That one's on me. What do I sign? You don't hear anything about that. But somebody, you got a bad actor out there, and he goes at it with the cop, and the cop ends up shooting him. It's portrayed by the left-wing media as white cops hunting black people in the streets. And so now you have a whole bunch of black people who are more now frightened, so they're more likely to run from police when that happens, because they've been told that they can't trust the police. So the police, who are their line against defense in the high-crime neighborhoods, where unfortunately they sometimes have to live, their own protectors are then portrayed as willing victimizers who are really looking out for any black person that they can screw with. And then the racial divide grows and grows and grows. And it had almost healed through Motown and, all the wonderful people that we had. Mainly, I think it was Motown. It was first. It was like Louis Armstrong and the jazz movement. Duke Ellington, Count Basie, the Rat Pack had Sammy Davis Jr. in it. Everybody loved him. He loved them. They could kid each other. It was no big deal. People were going, black people are just us with darker skin. That's all it is. I didn't know that many black people, but now, awesome. If the Supremes are black girls, I would be proud to have any of my daughters as lovely and talented as the Supremes. This would be somebody, just discovering black people in the late 50s when Motown came up. And then the civil rights movement came along to repair that one pocket of the country where there still were antiquated laws actually prohibiting the freedoms of black people. That was accomplished. White people all over the country were saying, well, of course racism is stupid. Let's get rid of all the old Jim Crow laws and let's go forward. And then we had a period of relative peace. And then Spike Lee and all those other activists and the people who had been second fiddle type civil rights leaders of much lesser charisma, intelligence, and importance than Martin Luther King. They dug the gig. They wanted to stay in the gig where they could just go from place to place and make speeches. So they had to keep finding any place where there was racial tension, blame it necessarily, or any tension between a black person and a white person, turn it into a necessarily an instance of racism, and everything went horribly wrong again. So the left, over and over and over again, the activist left, not people who just lean left because they have a generosity of spirit and they think that everybody ought to be, have national health care and a free college education. There's some really people that are governed by a generosity of spirit, and they often end up on the left because they don't do the research and see how these things worked out in the long run. But the activists are rotten people in a lot of situations, and I know some activists who are not along this line, who are really good people. But even they have to live in denial when they have to try to avoid learning the statistics. So, but I think that this is happening with the people coming up on the border, from the border, coming up to the border, I should say. And it breaks my heart for them, and it breaks my heart for this nation that that point will be missed, and everybody will just think, oh, this is. Half the people will blame Donald Trump for being a horrible person, and the other people will then blame Hondurans for not respecting our border, when undoubtedly they were conned into this thing. So then we move over to the third outrage of the week, which was the bomber. And I will tell you that there are an awful lot of people, and I mentioned this earlier, who are really working on trying to get people like this Cesar Sayak, is that his name? Forgive me if I get that wrong. Cesar whatever. The people that have no place in the world. They're low status males for the most part. They've tried to get famous. They've tried to make people love them. Nothing happened. They came along. They found the Trump movement, or the Antifa movement or whatever, and they think this is something that's going to give me purpose and meaning in life. And then they hear people on the radio and in the blogosphere online talking about, these same people over and over again. We're going to rag on Maxine Waters continually. We're going to rag on all these different people who popped up. I mean, that Robert De Niro was on that list. That Robert De Niro was on that list really lets you know that this was a media-driven kind of a thing, because there was a lot of people talking about Robert De Niro. He came to exemplify the sort of knee-jerk leftism and anti-Trumpism of show business, because he's the guy who came out at the Tony Awards and said, "Fuck Trump," right? So you get a guy like this Cesar Sayak guy, and somewhere in him there's a little nobility that wants to come out, and he wants to be a knight in protection of some noble king, and all these weird thoughts in his addled mind come together, and he thinks he has to defend the president, and the only way he can think of how to do it. So he, goes online and learns how to make pipe bombs, obviously not very well, sends them off to some places. He thinks he'll blow some people up, or just make them feel very frightened. I don't know what the deal is. Donald Trump never asked for that. That's never been appropriate, but there's so many voices that aren't Donald Trump who are twisting Donald Trump's message into a reactionary, bigoted sort of message, and into a hateful message where if you're mad at Maxine Waters, of course the thing to do is blow her fucking hands off. You know, it doesn't represent you guys, it doesn't represent me, and the people who are messing with these poor Hondurans and causing them to walk 1,000 miles for nothing but heartache don't represent my good neighbors here who happen to vote Democrat. So our job is to know this, to remember this. Whatever side you're on, give a little credit to your friends and neighbors who you know are not crazy activists, either right or left, and don't buy into this never-ending cycle of rage stimulation that we have now in the media. So it's 34 minutes I've been yammering at you guys here. I'm so sorry I went on so long, but it had something to do with this wonderful cup of coffee I'm having here in my... I don't know why I'm trying to sell coffee mugs. I'm sure there's not much profit in a coffee mug. Anyway, I will be on the job for a few days. Sorry that we didn't have a great video for you this week, but we will next week, I promise. Oh, one more thing, one last thing. Let's make this 35 minutes. I have a 8-part series on feminism that's lurking on our Blue Collar Logic page on Facebook, and our project over the next few weeks that Jason's going to be tied up in training for his new job is we're going to repackage those slightly, give them the wider format rather than the narrow one that you've seen for the stuff that originally posted over there. And we're going to post that 8-part series where I kind of really go down through the lies, the misconceptions that have led to this second wave feminism. I wish I'd have used the term second wave feminism more in the making of the videos. I really hadn't heard that term much, and so and then it sort of went viral, and I said I should have used that when I was making that thing. But there's a lot of good thinking in it, I think. A lot of it will be stimulating, and what we'll do is we're going to repackage that, and then we'll release those over the next few weeks while we're otherwise in somewhat of a lull. And I think you guys will like that, and it'll give you some food for thought. Okay, so I hope you're having a great Sunday, and I'll talk to you soon. Dave Morrison signing off from the Hobo Dojo.